Hi there, in this video we're going to take a look at Lightning Forms and how it can be used to transform your SharePoint list forms into business solutions. So one of the things we're going to do is take this expense report application and transform it using tabs, improved layout, styling, and also a sublist that's bringing in the expense items from a separate list into this main form. So what you'll see here is we've got this new form that we can go through and of course submit an expense claim, but we don't want to repeat all of this information, such as the sort of header details for the expense report for each expense item, such as a flight or a meal that we may be claiming for as an employee. So what we're going to do is take a separate list, which is the expense items list, which you'll find in here as I go to my site contents. So we'll take the expense items, which contains the expenses type, the claim amount, and of course a description, and we're going to embed that onto the main expense report form, so that we can fill out one form with a sort of header detail section so that we can collect all that information very quickly in one business form. So in order to do that, first of all, we're going to navigate into the expense report. And rather than having this long list of fields to scroll through, what we're going to do is start to transform that. And the way that we will do that is by clicking onto the Lightning Forms Customization dialog button at the top of the form. And you'll see here that we've got the new form, the edit form, and the display form, of which we can customize. So this is used for when we're creating new items, or of course editing existing items, or even opening items. Now we can customize each independently, but we can also customize the first one and take that design and import it into the edit form and the display form as well, and still remain separate, so we can go through and apply logic that may be specific to the edit form or the display form and so on as well. So in order to get customizing, we're going to first of all customize the new form. So we'll hit customize on that, and that will launch the design experience, which as you can see is opening up in my browser here. And we can go through and simply drag and drop the controls where we want them to appear. We can add logic to the different fields with intuitive code. We can also go through and add buttons with actions and also style the look and feel of the form, and that can also be done conditionally. So let's get going. What we're going to do first of all is just add in a header. So we're going to go past all these different fields here that we could add onto the form. Notice we've got other controls like data lookups and tabs, which we're going to be exploring inside this video. And here is a rich text area, so we're just going to drop that onto the form. And the rich text can be really useful for header information, or also for providing instruction on the form as well. So in here we're just going to add the title of expense report form, and we can take that text and we can make it a header and so on using the built-in styles, center it, and basically apply any sort of styling that we want, including adding images or hyperlinks and things like that to the form as well. So that's the header done as far as I'm concerned. So once we've got the header on there, we're going to also add some tab controls, and the tabs will make it much easier for me to or for users to be able to navigate the form. So what we're going to do first of all is take this first tab, and we're going to configure that tab and call it claimant. So this is the person who's making the expense claim. And notice we've got the visible and enabled attributes, and this is of course going to be visible and enabled for everybody. So there's no restrictions there. We'll leave that as it is, and we'll choose a suitable icon so that it's a little bit more meaningful as to what this tab is for. So we've got the claimant making a new expense claim, so I'm just going to choose this little option here and OK that, and you'll see that once we click onto OK, that becomes the icon for that particular tab. And I want another tab as well, so we'll click onto the plus. Again, we'll click onto the configure tab, and this time we're going to call this one approval, and this is going to be only for approvers to come in here, but what we could do is actually go through and make it only enabled for approvers or only visible for approvers, and I'm going to do that right at the end so that you can actually see some of the logic that we're also going to build into that tab as well. So let's choose an icon before we move on. So I'm just going to choose the check mark here and click onto OK. So we've now got the approval and the claimant. Now, there's a lot of space on these forms. So what I'm also going to do, since we've got two tabs and lots of white space, I'm actually going to turn the row configuration in both of these tabs to two columns. So that allows me to have side-by-side fields, and also allows me to go in and change the form settings so that it's a little bit larger whilst retaining the responsive design. So we're taking up more of that page and having a sort of wider form where we can collect more information without scrolling up and down trying to find fields. So we've got our layout here, and what we're going to do is start to drag and drop these controls into the tabs. So here we've got the last name field, so I'm just going to drop that into the left-hand side, and we've got the full name, which I'll drop in as well, and then we also have first name and full name, so we've got those on there, and email address we'll drag in. We've also got company and job title, and all the information that we may want to collect about these users. We can just simply go through and drop that into the claimant details. So we've got all of the information needed for an expense claim. So we're just about there with those fields, and that's going to be taking up a lot less space now since it's all organized into those two different columns and into that tab. So I've also got a rich text field here called notes. So I'm going to leave that where it is. And then we've got the total expense claim, which is a custom column, and we're going to drag that and drop that into the approval tab. So here we'll bring the total expense claim up, and whether it's approved or not will also jump into there as well. And I've got the manager, which in fact I want the manager to go onto the claimant details. So that can be filled out by the user. They can specify who their manager is. And we've also got location and department as well, which I added. So we're going to just drop these also onto the claimant tab, so they can choose what location they're based at and what department they're in. And I'll just drop that one beneath that location field there. Okay, so we've got all the fields that we need, and the approvers can come in here and approve the expense claim as well. Okay, and in fact this notes could go in there, so that could be useful for the manager to provide some notes as to why it's approved or not. So we've got our layout created. Now sometimes when you're completing these designs, you realize that actually you could do with another field, and that is the case here. I could do with a field to allow me to set a expense claim limit. So what I'm going to do here is add a new column. And notice that I don't have to go outside of my design experience to do that. So I'm going to add the expense claim limit. Okay, and that's going to be a currency field. So we'll choose that. Okay, and we'll select OK. And this is going to be down to the manager to decide on what that limit is for the claimant. So that can be set here, and of course we've got the total expense claim coming in. All right, so the next thing we want to do is bring in the sublist, and the sublist is basically going to be that expense items list. So we can go through here and add the expense items list. So here it is, we can just select that. And when we're adding that, what we want to do is maintain a join of sorts with the expense report. So the items are related to the actual header information for that expense claim. So we're going to do that by using a sub-item. So we'll select the sub-item option, and that will allow us to choose a lookup column that relates these two lists, or if one doesn't exist, we can add it. So here I'm going to add the lookup to expense report column, click onto add, and that has now been created. And you can see here we've got the expense item sublist embedded in the form, which is very much like a repeating table inside an InfoPath form. And there's lots of different properties that we can set on this as well. So whether we want to show the command bar, show the search, and show the header, and that type of thing inside the form as well. So we've okayed that. So we've got the claim coming through. The next thing I want to do is take all of the items that we're going to have on this expense claim, total them up, and put that value into the total expense claim field automatically. So the way that we'll do that is by adding a calculation. And to do the calculation, we're going to hover over this field and choose the configure expressions, and in here you can see the different expressions that we can configure. So when this field is going to be visible, when it's enabled, we can set initial field values, we can also set calculated field values, or also perform some validation such as required or a separate validation rule and validation text. So on here we're going to actually go through and set a calculated field. So we'll click onto the expression builder, and the expression builder, I can do so much without actually having to write any code. So in here what we're going to do is go to our sublist, and inside our sublist called expense items, we're going to take the claim amount and we're going to create a sum function on that claim amount. So all we needed to do there was double click and use the mouse. So I can now go through and save that, and that's our calculation performed there. Now, of course, there's other simple calculations that you can also perform, or even concatenations and that type of thing. So if we wanted to, for example, calculate the full name from the first and last, we could do that. So in the calculated option here, we're going to actually go with a template, and I'll take the first name. I'm just going to drop in a space here and put in the title field, which is actually the last name. Okay, and that will perform that calculation for me. So we'll just hit save now, and that is done. All right, so we've got a calculation going on there as well. All right, now before we move on any further with things like styling, I'm also going to add a button, because we can go through and make an expense report claim, and our manager won't actually be aware that we've done it. So in fact, before we create the button, let's go through and specify who our manager is. So I could do that by going into the configure expressions again, and on the initial value, we can actually get to the contextual objects, and against the user, from the user's profile, I can select the manager. So if the manager has been set inside my user profile, that will be the initial value here for the manager, and the user can go through and either accept it, or they could change it since it's just the initial value. Okay, and the other thing we're going to do, so as I mentioned, is we'll add a button. So on the command bar here, we're going to add a new button. So we've got save and we've got cancel, and I'm going to have a submit expenses for approval. So we'll go through and select an icon just like we did for the tab, and so if I just hit the word send, or type send rather, I can select a relevant icon for that. We can also specify when this is going to be available and configure the actions. So my actions, the first thing we're going to do is actually do a save. So we'll choose a save form action, and then we're going to do a send email action, and it's going to be sent from the current user. So we'll go down here to the current or context objects, and against the user we'll select the user's email address. And in the to field, this is going to be sent to my manager. So we can go through and select that manager field from the form, and there's all the different properties for that. So it's the manager's email that we're after. And we can also go through and create a subject. So expense claim will be my subject, and in the body I can say please approve my expenses. Okay, and if we wanted to concatenate things like the total expense claim or anything like that, or hyperlink to the item, we can also do that too. Now, it's useful to provide some feedback to the user. So the next thing I'm going to do is actually show a message. So we'll choose that show message, and the message is going to be a status update, which is going to have the success status color, which is green, and we'll say submitted. In there, we'll have this show for around about 8 seconds, and in here we'll have a message that says you have submitted your expenses for approval. Okay, and that's that part done. And then the next thing we're going to do is just simply close the form, and that will take us back to the list. Okay, and that's our button done. Now we also want another button that is going to be performed by the managers, and that is going to be a approve button. So we could either put that on the command bar, or we could also have it here on the form itself. So I can go through and select a button on the form, and what we're going to do here is again save the form, and we're going to go through and set a form field value, and the form field is going to be the approved. So we're going to set that to 1, which is true and yes, or whatever. So that's setting the form field value, and of course we could go through and send another email, and that could be to the claimant. So this to the claimant's email address this time. Sorry, that's who it's from. So let's just drop that into the who it's to. So it's being sent from the current user again, so the current user's email. And in here we'll just have expenses approved. All right, so there's our send email, and once more we'll just do a close form at the end here. Okay, so we've got two different buttons there, but this time we don't want this button showing for everybody. So let me just save it first of all, and we'll go into the button name, and that's going to be called approve. We don't really want it to be the primary button. Okay, and if we just jump back in here to configure expressions, we only want this to be visible or enabled for the manager. So in there we could go through and set that for the manager in here. So we'll just say is equal to current user is equal to manager. So under the contextual objects against the user, there we go. All right, so that's going to be the case for that. Now the next thing we want to do is a bit of styling, and this is going to be some conditional styling. So in here, what we want to do is really highlight it if you've gone over your total expense claim. So in the total expense claim field, we're going to add the styling, and we will do that by clicking into the styling button. And under styling here, you'll see all the different style types. So as we navigate through, we're looking for the columns that are in the approval tab. So as I scroll down, here's the approval tab, and in there we have the total expense claim, which is the one that we're after. So I can click onto the parentheses here and choose add style. I can reuse a style, so it's possible to save these, but what I'm going to do is actually just go through and name this. So it says style for total expense claim, so that's fine. I'm going to be happy with that name. And as we click next, we can go through and add our condition. So our condition is that the total expense claim is greater than the expense claim limit. So if that occurs, then we want to apply some formatting. And the formatting in here is going to actually change the color of the border. So we're going to first of all increase the size of the border to 4 pixels, and we'll change the color of that border to either a theme color so that it doesn't look too out of place, and we've actually got a sort of burgundy red, which is the color for this particular theme. Or if I really want that to stand out, I could go for a really bright red and select that instead. Okay, so we've got our red color set, and you can see here the code that has been set for that one as well. Now, in addition to that, we could also go through and change the color of the tab. So we can take the tab itself, because it may not be obvious to the user if they're on the claimant tab that there's a red border around the total expense claim. So we want to bring their attention to the tab as well. So against the tab itself, we can add a style. So we've got style for approval. Again, we could change that name if we wanted to. And we're effectively going to have exactly the same condition, which is total expense claim is greater than the expense claim limit. And again, if that occurs, then we could change the color of the tab itself, or what I'm going to do is actually just change the color of the icon. So we'll go with that theme red in this particular case. All right, so we can save and close. Happy with that. And we're going to go through and save and close the form now, and we'll give it a test run. So as we hit new, we can go in and fill out our form. So I'm going to put in my my last name and my first name in here, and you can see how that has calculated my full name. And we can put in the email address, which is going to be that, and we'll put in the company name of Lightning Tools, and of course we could fill out all the other details in here as well. I didn't have a manager set, so I'm just going to go through and drop in a manager. And now that we've done that, we can go through and create our expense items. So I'm going to hit new, and notice how that opens up another panel. So in here we're going to have a trip to Vegas, and that is going to involve travel at 1,000, and that's our first item. And we're going to create another item in here, which is going to be a meal in Vegas. So that is going to be food, and that will be 200. And we may also have some other things as well, such as taxi, etc. So in there we'll also choose travel, and we'll say that that is 200. Okay, so whilst I'm filling that out, that has gone through and totaled up my expense claim. So you'll notice in here that it's actually highlighted in red, and the icon here is burgundy rather than blue, because we've gone over the expense claim limit. So I better go through and set what that limit is, which of course my manager would typically do. And notice how that styling has now gone away. So we are within our limit, and of course we could have that default for that as well. And notice that I can't approve my own expenses here. That approve button is not available to me because I am not actually the manager. Whereas if demo user 6 came in here, demo user 6 could actually go through and approve that expense claim. So we can actually go through and try that. So I'll set me as the manager. And now notice how I could in fact approve my own expenses. So we'll hit approve on that one. It will save it. It's set the approve to yes, and that will have sent the email as well to the recipient. Okay, and there's one other thing that I want to do on this form. You'll notice when we go through and create a new item that on here we've got on the claimant tab the location and the department, and in here we've got a few different locations, but the departments are showing as duplicates, and the reason for that is this is looking up from a separate list, which is in here called location lookup. And the location lookup basically contains a location and departments within inside that location. So what I want to do is once I set the location, I want to filter out the departments. So let's go through and apply that. So back into the expense report, we'll once again customize the new form. And under the claimant field, we're going to come down to the department, and we're going to click onto the field configuration, and we're going to apply a filter. And that filter is basically going to be the department title is equal to the location field on this particular form. So there's the location, so we can now save that. And notice in here as well, if you've got duplicate values being returned, you can go through and remove those duplicate items. And also if you've got over 5,000 items in a list that's causing you a threshold when you're trying to query it, we can also do an enhanced lookup to get around that issue as well. Okay, so there's our logic there, and we'll okay that one. Let's save and close one more time, and in here we'll go through and create a new item. And now, as you can see, if we go through and choose a location, we'll see just the departments that are based in that location, and so on. Okay, so the last thing we're going to do once we're happy with this is actually export our design. So we're just going to jump into the new form again, and I'm going to export that, and we'll save and close here. And we're now going to go into our edit form and customize that one. So now I can import that design. So we now have the same look and feel on our edit form. So we can save and close this. And we could also do the same thing on the display form as well. So as we go into customize the display form, we'll take that same design and now that it is complete, you'll see that we've got that same design throughout. So as I open up this this item in read mode, we have the tabs still, but everything is read only. And if we were to edit that item, notice once again we've got that same look and feel. Okay, so that is Lightning Forms, and you can play around with this as well. Either arrange a personal demo if you want to look at how to build a solution that you have in mind for your organization, or you can download a trial on this page and you can experience that for yourself inside your environment for 30 days. Okay, many thanks for watching.